COVID-19 fears, postal service worries, and motivated voters all contributing to a huge rise in the number of people heading to the polls this year in Arizona. We'll tell you how to make sure your vote gets counted coming up.
Plus, the Phoenix Rising reinstated their coach after he allegedly made a homophobic slur at an opponent. How this could affect the team going forward.
And vacation shaming on social media. How people are being bullied for booking trips during the pandemic. We'll break it down later this half hour.
Cronkite News starts now.
Good evening and welcome to Cronkite News on Arizona PBS. I'm Maithili Gubbi.
And I'm Kelsey Calasi. Thank you for joining us.
With less than 2 weeks to go before the election, the presidential candidates had one final face-off last night. With fewer interruptions, President Donald Trump and former Vice President Joe Biden took to the stage in Nashville and offered their final pitches to voters, including how they will combat coronavirus on a day that saw one of the highest numbers of new U.S. cases since the crisis began. The president making reference to the spike in cases here in Arizona. Take a listen.
And we're fighting it, and we're fighting it hard. There is a spike. There was a spike in Florida, and it's now gone. There was a very big spike in Texas. It's now gone. There was a very big spike in Arizona. It's now gone.
However, the Arizona Department of Health Services Director, Dr. Kara Christ, disagrees. She says the coronavirus data is actually trending upward in our state. In a blog post, she wrote, "While the statewide metrics still meet the benchmarks for the moderate category of COVID-19 spread for business and school opening, we are seeing the rates and percent positivity increase in many counties across all regions of the state." She also pointed out the statewide percent positivity rate has increased from 3.9% a few weeks ago to 5.5% last week. On a positive note, she confirmed hospitals are currently reporting capacity in their inpatient and intensive care unit beds with ample ventilator availability. She says inpatient admissions and emergency room visits due to COVID-19 are remaining low.
The debate was the last chance for Trump and Biden to square off before Election Day. But while November 3rd is the last day to vote, it's hardly the only day anymore. Tens of millions of Americans have voted early, and Arizona voters are part of that trend, as Carolina Hassett reports from our Washington bureau.
Millions tuned in to last night's final debate between President Donald Trump and Democratic challenger Joe Biden. But more than 1 million Arizona voters probably just tuned out because they had already voted. The number of early voters is up sharply over the 2016 presidential election, driven by COVID-19 and fears of overwhelmed election systems.
Arizonans, like people everywhere in the U.S., are worried about COVID. And so many people prefer to vote by mail or to vote early to avoid crowds on Election Day.
Along with COVID worries come COVID voting restrictions that could make for long lines at polling places.
Just imagine having to have that 6 feet rule. That line is definitely going to be around the corner.
Other experts point to news reports about postal service delays.
There's been that talk about delayed mail service. So I think that has probably played more of a factor than anything.
Whatever the reason, voters aren't taking any chances. In Maricopa County alone, officials have processed 837,000 early ballots so far, 50% more than the 552,000 collected at this point in 2016.
There's tremendous interest in this election, and I think there's tremendous interest in avoiding COVID. And I think there's also a lot of concern about having your ballot counted.
Some county recorders we talked to were too busy to even give us a number. But the 9 counties we did hear from said they have already processed 1.2 million ballots, giving people yet another reason to vote now.
They're also getting those ballots in earlier because they also understand that so many people are choosing to vote this way.
Arizona is not alone. Early voting has increased across the country, but it appears to be dominated by Democrats, including in Arizona, where more Democrats have voted early than Republicans.
This may be related to the president suggesting that voting by mail isn't safe. that it may have turned off Republican voters.
Many Republicans are deciding that they will vote on Election Day.
Partisan or not, TURCER thinks the decision to vote early is a good move on voters' part.
We all need to do things in a more timely fashion and not procrastinate, and that's what voters are doing.
In Washington, Carolina Hassett, Cronkite News.
You can still vote early in person, but the deadline to request a mail-in ballot was today at 5 p.m. If you have a mail-in ballot, it needs to be postmarked by next Tuesday, or you can deliver it by hand to a voting location or a ballot drop box until 7 p.m. on election night. For more details on voting, check out www.arizona.vote.
President Donald Trump will return to Arizona for another visit before Election Day, making it his 7th trip to the swing state. This past week, he made 2 stops in Prescott and Tucson. The president, vice president, and Trump's older children have all made appearances here to rally votes to the right. No specific date or place has been announced for his latest trip to the Grand Canyon State.
Why are so many Indigenous women and girls going missing or being murdered? It's been over 1 year since Governor Doug Ducey signed HB 2570, establishing a study group to investigate this question. Cronkite News reporter Kylie Cochran walks us through Arizona's efforts and highlights the potential impact of recent federal action on this crisis.
Culturally, traditionally, spiritually, that's not how we want to bury our loved one.
For many Indigenous families, this is a crisis that hits home.
Missing and murdered is very personal to me with my mom. Her husband was missing, and just remains of his body was found. We don't know if he was murdered.
But Laura Imus Nasenhoya, the founder of Haunzi Consulting Services, has dedicated 17 years to this issue, supporting victim services and various state, federal, and tribal governments. Now she's working with State Representative Jennifer Germain of Chandler, who sponsored last year's House bill, creating an Arizona study group to collect data on this crisis.
We've been really digging into where the problems with jurisdiction lie and where cases go cold.
From the Urban Indian Health Institute, found Arizona had the 3rd highest number of cases in the country of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. But that number only reflects those who have come forward.
Sometimes we're just afraid to even talk about it. And maybe it's taboo in some tribes, and we have to be respectful to that.
So, the study group recently conducted a set of anonymous interviews with the victims' families.
We can only learn this through the stories of our survivors, through the stories of our families.
At the federal level, President Donald Trump signed Savannah's Act and the Not Invisible Act on October 10th. Both acts complement each other by upping law enforcement's response and increasing coordination between federal departments on this crisis.
We are really, really excited to see the passage of Savannah's Act and also the passage of Not Invisible Act, because those will bring federal dollars, they will bring resources, and they will bring database upgrades to our law enforcement database systems.
However, these federal acts may have some drawbacks for Arizona.
Savannah's Act is really about training law enforcement. They left out the victim service piece of it, and also the data collection. So I still believe that there's that missing link for our survivors and our families.
That's where the Arizona Study Group comes in, by finding, tracking, and analyzing Arizona-specific data. They can answer,
what is causing our girls to be missing was the question.
Kylie Cochran, Cronkite News.
The study committee will be releasing a 200-page report on their findings next month. The goal is to use the data and push for policy proposals similar to a state-level Violence Against Women Act.
Republican Senator Martha McSally met with Supreme Court nominee Amy Coney Barrett this week. Here is video of the two of them in Washington. McSally, who is facing a tough challenge for her seat from Mark Kelly, said Barrett is a, quote, barrier breaker who inspires her. Republicans control the Senate 53-47. Waiting to confirm a court nominee until after November 3rd would have risked Democrats taking over the Senate, the White House, or both. A vote is expected on Monday.
The Phoenix Rising will have their head coach back on the sidelines this weekend. The team took Rick Schantz off administrative leave after the embattled coach missed 3 games due to insensitivity towards a homophobic comment made by one of his players. Emiliano Ferragasso tells us what went into that decision and how Schantz has reflected on his time away from the team.
Phoenix Rising FC reinstated their head coach Rick Schantz after being put on administrative leave 3 weeks ago, following allegations that Rising forward Junior Flemings directed a homophobic slur at San Diego Loyal SC's Colin Martin, an openly gay player. Following his leave of absence, Schantz was candid about the situation.
I've spent a lot of time reflecting, learning, listening, improving as a human being. What I used to believe and what I used to think, I thought I was a good person. I thought that it was okay, and my mom had gay friends, I had gay friends. Everyone says that, but I've learned now that I was just tolerating, and tolerating. I've learned it means that I'm better than somebody else, and that's not the truth.
But what impacted him the most was the toll this took on his wife and daughter, something an emotional Schantz took to heart.
My wife was all right. She was very supportive. I love her and I'm thankful. My daughter was scared, is Dad a bad person? But she's more mature than I am. She's grown up. She's far more accepting than I am, and I have to learn from her and from today's society.
And while the players welcomed him back with open arms, the message is clear that this is more than just a game.
I think everyone understands that it's more than football. It's more than soccer. It's about acceptance, and it's about making a difference in the world. And I think the players, once they understood that and they heard the message from our ownership, that they were proud to be a part of it.
While it's clear the organization still has some off-the-field issues, there have been steps put in place to right the ship. But for now, the club's sole focus is on winning the ship on the field. And that starts this Saturday against El Paso. For Cronkite Sports, I'm Emiliano Ferragasso.
It took 12 years to collect space dust from a touch-and-go landing and liftoff. Find out why Arizona scientists are thrilled about the successful mission to an asteroid and what they plan to do with the dust next.
On Masterpiece. We've been a bit worried about you, about your health, and Mark. Can we really be certain that he's telling the truth?
You got something to say? Say it to my face. You can't just walk out on me like that.
Have you been drinking?
Have you?
Hopefully everything will get back to normal. Normal wasn't very good, was it?
You're just worried that he's going to kill me? As long as you believe him, that's all that matters.
Flesh and Blood.
It is?
On Masterpiece.
All new, Sunday night at 8 on Arizona PBS.
If someone told you that you had to work more than 10 years to get a 6-second payoff, would you do it? A team of researchers at the University of Arizona said yes to that question years ago. And this week they were, as they like to say, over the asteroid with the result. I have more on their story.
And we have touchdown!
That was the reaction this week as OSIRIS-REx made contact with an asteroid 200 million miles away. And this was the reaction of University of Arizona professor Dante Loretta.
The team here is ecstatic. There's definitely tears of joy all around. The spacecraft behaved flawlessly, and we think we did it.
Loretta and his team from UArizona spent more than a decade to get to this point. A 6-second touch-and-go hit on the ancient asteroid Bennu in hopes of retrieving a sample of at least 60 grams.
That way outperformed what anybody believed could be done. It was an amazing day.
It scored a number of firsts for NASA, including the first time a spacecraft touched an asteroid to collect a sample. On Tuesday, OSIRIS-REx hit Bennu less than a meter from the target site. There were some surprises along the way. Technicians had planned for a smooth landing site, for example.
Instead, we came on an asteroid that was completely covered with rocks of all sizes.
That limited potential landing sites to areas about the size of 2 parking spaces, on an asteroid 500 meters in diameter, a little wider than the Empire State Building is tall. But the mission went on as planned.
Down to the asteroid surface, do a quick touch of the asteroid and not attempt to land on it, collect the sample with our tag SAM mechanism, and then get back off the surface.
Early indications are that the touch-and-go collection was a success.
In case you can't tell, I'm pretty excited about all of this. This is great news.
Bennu was chosen because it comes relatively close to Earth and because it could be made of carbon and water.
Those same elements are potential resources for future exploration of the solar system. Water would be one of the most valuable commodities that could be found in an asteroid because you could use it to support human colonies or stations, as well as to develop fuel sources.
On Monday, teams will determine just how much sample was actually collected and will start figuring out how to analyze it.
Of course, the University of Arizona will be a central organization in the analysis of the return material. We've got new laboratories that we've installed over the last couple of years.
There's still the little matter of a return trip. OSIRIS-REx, which launched in 2016, is not expected to get back to Earth until 2023.
The sample opening will be the moment of glory where we actually see what Bennu is made of.
But this week, it was time to celebrate for the people who have been working on this mission for over a decade.
And so I just wanted to make sure that I congratulated the teams. You guys all made not just the United States of America proud, but you made humanity proud.
And, Loretta hopes, provided